Hi guys, and welcome to this 10-minute turn video from Napoleonic PC Wargamers. Using the John Tiller Napoleonic series just to explain a little bit about warfare in the Age of Napoleon and have a look at the units and under the hood stuff and how to use the units, how they were used using the John Tiller games. Now this is campaign Leipzig that we're in at the moment, and we're going to have a look at today in this video at artillery, how artillery was utilised, what we can and can't do with artillery, and have a look at the artillery rules that are represented in the games. The first thing to note then, there are 6 different types of artillery that are used in these games. We've got some heavy guns, we've got light guns that are designated as light guns, we've got horse artillery, and we've got howitzers. We also have some special artillery such as rocket troops in this case. Now these were British Royal Horse Artillery. This was a battery lent to Bernadotte for his Swedish army during the Battle of Leipzig as sort of an experimental formation. But I think they're also available in Wellington's Peninsula War. Certainly as Wellington got up into the south of France, you'll find some rocket troops there as well. Another type that isn't represented on the screen at the moment are sort of fixed guns or entrenched guns in fortifications and redoubts and things like that. The only difference between the guns that are on the screen at the moment is these are all mobile, whereas those fixed guns aren't. You can change the direction and facing of those guns, but you can't limber and unlimber them, move them around the battlefield. Now, the first thing we've got to do then is get this artillery into position. Now, anytime we move anything around, change facing, limber, unlimber a gun, it's going to use some of our movement points. So we take these light guns up here and move them into position on the high ground of the road. We can see we've used some movement points. Now we want to unlimber those guns because that's a nice position on the high ground to fire over these Prussians here. We can go to this button up here to change line column. It also limbers and unlimbers artillery, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. The same with these bigger, heavier guns, probably 8-pounders. We can press spacebar to have a look. Okay, we've got the 2nd Old Guard Foot Artillery, 1st Division Old Guard, and we can move these guys into position as well. It's used some movement points, but we still have enough to actually unlimber the guns. Horse artillery. These are lighter guns, and the difference between light and heavy guns, as we had just previously explained, are that horse artillery, all the equipment, all the guns, and all the troopers and artillerymen were actually mounted as well. So they were very much a mobile artillery force. To that end, you get a lot more movement points, and you get the bonus of being able to actually move these guns into position, unlimbering them, and being able to fire on the same turn. So if we have a go at these Russians, so we moved, we unlimbered, and then fired all in the same turn. We cannot do that with any gun that's a heavy gun or designated as a light gun. They're a lot bigger. These are foot artillery as well, so a lot of the artillerymen are actually running behind the guns, so we cannot fire on the same turn or as the same turn as we've limbered or changed facing with these guns. I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. Next type of artillery is a howitzer. Now all these guns are affected, the first 3, by line of sight. They only can shoot what they can see. Howitzers, meanwhile, they can actually lob shells over obstructions, unobstructed territory and stuff like that. So I'll show you what I mean in a second. Here we have an entrenched hex. Now anytime you move artillery across the field, ideally you want to be on these nice paved roads because you're going to get a further distance using the least amount of movement points. If you start going over fields and things like that, it's going to cost you more movement points to go less distance. And if you go over obstructed hexes and rivers and through forests and towns and things like that, the potential is you're going to either disorder, and you're certainly going to use a lot more movement points to do it, so you're not going to cover the distance. So we try to use roads as much as possible. Now in this entrenched hex here, if I was to move this artillery in there, I'm going to get an instant disorder. If you think about it, trying to move 4 guns with all their equipment, all the people and the horses pulling them and things like that into a trench is going to be an absolute nightmare. It's going to be chaos, and there we go, instant disorder. It's going to take a disorder check on the next turn to actually get rid of them, but we cover that in movement. So I'm going to go back and just undo that last movement, bring him down here, and then unlimber him here. So there's nothing I can really do more on this turn. So we're going to go ahead and have a look at the allies. So the Allies have got this Royal Horse Artillery, the rocket troops here. Now they are treated as a light gun horse artillery, if you like, so they can still move and fire on the same turn. However, they've got a little caveat with the way they fire. They have a minimum firing distance. If I was to move these French troops up here in a second, right underneath the guns, we actually have a minimum firing distance of 2 hexes, just the way that rockets used. They weren't effective at that close range and couldn't fire canister shot, if you like. The same as these guns up here. So what I'm going to go and do now is move these troops here, just to show you what I mean. Move them up here, and then if I want to fire, what I can do, fire on these guys, and they are devastating. If you imagine these rockets, they weren't very accurate, however they cause a terrible effect on men and on their morale as well. Seeing basically massive fireworks coming at you and exploding is going to have an effect on your morale. So we go back to the French turn here, so we can start firing on people. We use these light guns to have a go at these Prussians in line. Because these Austrians are all bunched up and we have the column pass through fire modifier, it's going to have an effect when we fire on them on both of these units in there. I'll show you what I mean by that. So we select these heavy guns, fire at the Austrians. We get to choose which one we want as our primary unit that we fire upon. And that was devastating. They're all bunched up within that 100-meter hex. And at that range, so we're talking about 300-400 meters, they would have used round shot. Now, round shot had a hell of a lot of momentum. It wasn't the case that it was just going to hit the person in front and stop dead. It would take a very strong person to stop a cannonball like that. That cannonball's momentum would have carried it through the line and through the column and taken potentially quite a few people with it. Horse artillery, we're going to have a go at these Russians. And we'll have a look at this howitzer. Now this howitzer, if we go to line of sight, cannot see this Swedish infantry behind this sort of mound and high ground here. But remember, they can lob shells over obstructions. Does not mean you're going to hit that target. We're going to certainly aim at that target. But it goes through what we call indirect fire. Excuse me. If there was infantry in that hex, even though we've targeted there, it would have had an effect on them as well. It's basically how it's used to lob shells up and over obstructions with a small chance of hitting a target. It's not the accuracy, if you like, and guaranteed hit that the other types of artillery will offer you. Now, the other thing I want to show you is if we go into the French turn again, if we move or change the direction, the facing of these larger guns and light guns, so let's just do that in there and that guy there, it's used movement points to actually physically turn those guns around, and we lose the ability to fire in this turn now. So if I try to fire on these Prussians, for example, it says only horse artillery can move and fire in the same turn. However, if I was to do the same with the horse artillery and move those guys around, I still retain the ability to fire within the same turn as I've done with that during that movement. So guys, that's the basics of artillery, the different types of artillery we've got in the Untitled Napoleonic series. Hopefully it's been beneficial for those that weren't too sure about how it was used and what you can and can't do with artillery. Be sure to check out the videos on infantry and formations, as well as cavalry. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching.